Minister Clark joined us yesterday, as I said. He is the member of Dunedin. He's also the Minister of Consumer and Commerce, Consumer Affairs and Commerce. He's also the Minister for the Digital Economy and Communities, for the Earthquake Commission, for State-Owned Enterprises and for Statistics. He has a very wide remit, and I always wonder how tough it is to be a Minister of the Crown kind of covering that stuff. But actually, there's a lot of symmetry between some of his various portfolios, which he touched on yesterday. He's also a keen triathlete. He went to the University of Otago. He's a St Kitts graduate. He's a family man with 3 kids. So on behalf of all of us here and in the digital realm, a very warm welcome to Dr. Clark. And let's hear from Dr. Clark now.
Ngā mana, ngā reo, ngā karanga maha o tua, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ki ngā mana whenua, ko te atiawa, ko ngā ngati toa, anu nei aku mihi ki a koutou. Noku tuhana rei ki haere mai ki te whakanuia tēnei huihuinga whakahirihira. Nō reira, ngā manaakitanga ki runga i a tātou katoa, tēnā koutou, huri noa i te whare, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Well, good morning everyone, and thank you Richard for welcoming me here today. As I regularly do, I checked the weather this morning to find that it's warmer just about anywhere else than Wellington, so I do want to acknowledge everyone who's come out here this morning to this event, and I want to acknowledge those who'll be watching this presentation subsequently around the country, including in sunny Dunedin down in the south. I was impressed with that photo of my younger brother that you managed to provide as well. It's definitely good publicity, and I noticed a few of you out there recognise me also as a bike rider. I see there are a few fellow bike riders out there, I suspect. I want to say at the start, it is a real pleasure to open the 2021 Get in Shape Advice Summit. And I want to thank the Financial Services Council for inviting me to join you this morning and for putting on this event. I want to also acknowledge others who are here today, like the FMA, the CFFC, the Code Advisory Group, for the role that you've played in helping the industry through the process of transitioning to the new financial advice regime. I know it has been a long road and over several years to get to this point, and I'm grateful for everyone involved for their input and hard work. It is a particularly important time for us all to come together, as we know many people across New Zealand are worried about their finances as a result of COVID-19. And today I'd like to talk to you about my priorities for the sector and how we can work together to help manage the financial challenges that New Zealanders are facing now and will be facing into the future. I want to acknowledge at this outset as well the challenges that the sector has been facing over the past year. I'm well aware that COVID-19 has put immense pressure on financial advisors and financial institutions generally, and many of you will have experienced huge amounts of uncertainty and disruption during that time. It has been a busy 12 months for financial services organisations trying to support your customers, many of whom will have been stressed and in difficult situations during the pandemic, whilst also responding to the upcoming regulatory changes. So I want to thank you in that context for your efforts. It's encouraging to see how the sector has continued to support customers to achieve better outcomes during these difficult times. Now, supporting New Zealanders in these challenging and uncertain times is at the heart of the government's plan for our second term. Alongside keeping New Zealanders safe from COVID, we are committed to accelerating our economic recovery. The ongoing impacts of COVID-19 have resulted in many New Zealanders facing financial difficulties. And that means ensuring New Zealanders have access to financial support and advice is as important as it ever was as we navigate the road to long-term financial well-being. In just over 1 month, the new financial advice regime will begin. I appreciate the efforts in the industry in preparing for the new regime over the past year, and I recognise that these challenges have taken a considerable amount of time to prepare for. Minister Whāwhoi, who many of you will have met at previous events, has outlined the history which goes a long way back, this process. So I hope by now you are feeling well prepared for this new chapter. It's my hope that these changes will help to show the sector as one that consumers can have greater confidence in and lead to more everyday New Zealanders seeking engagement and being confident with their finances and making informed decisions that will improve their well-being both now and in the future. And if you think about it, if you do that at an individual level for New Zealanders and they are individually better off, that's actually better for our country as a whole, which is the sum total of all the individuals' financial situations. I want to reiterate that the changes under the new regime are important to ensure good consumer outcomes. And just like my predecessor, Chris Whāwhoi, I'm firmly committed to ensuring New Zealanders are able to access financial advice and be confident that the advice is of a quality that will help to build their financial resilience. And I don't have to tell any of you that financial advice plays a really important role in helping consumers achieve significant milestones in their lives, such as saving for a first home, planning for retirement, and having the means to manage unexpected financial shocks. We know that those who receive financial advice achieve better financial outcomes. And the new regime is about giving consumers greater confidence to seek that advice that will help with their financial goals and to ensure they have greater trust in the quality of that advice. For example, the new regime means that a consumer can trust that any advisor will need to prioritise their interests and comply with a code of conduct. Ultimately, this is about achieving greater consumer confidence in the financial advice sector and thus better financial outcomes for New Zealanders. Now, government and industry must work together to achieve these better financial outcomes for New Zealanders. As I said earlier, many New Zealanders are financially stressed due to the ongoing impacts of COVID-19. Research undertaken by the Commission for Financial Capability found that high levels of debt mean that even those with a good income and secure employment are not necessarily financially resilient. It's been estimated that 53% of New Zealanders would be at risk of falling into poverty if they had to forego even 3 months of their income. And that paints a worrying picture of our nation's financial health. It also concerns me that many New Zealanders have made poor investment decisions while trying to mitigate the financial impacts of the pandemic. In April last year, the Financial Markets Authority reported a 54% increase in the number of people switching between Kiwisaver funds, with many moving to more conservative funds to try and limit their losses. Yet those members will have locked in their losses and will not have experienced as much of the recovery as those who stayed the course. And such findings, of course, highlight the need for us to focus on building New Zealanders' financial resilience and literacy. While we're making some changes to regulatory settings to achieve this, the industry also has an important role to play here, and financial institutions don't need to wait for government to legislate for this progress to be made. One of the places we want to see this most is in the conduct of financial institutions. The government is committed to ensuring that financial institutions like banks and insurers are delivering good outcomes for their customers and that New Zealanders are being treated fairly. Just as the new financial advice regime seeks to build trust in the advice sector, treating customers fairly is essential to building trust in the wider financial services industry, which is why we have introduced legislation establishing the fair conduct principle that will apply to banks and to insurers. That is the part that government can play. There is also a lot that industry can do. I would strongly encourage financial services providers to be proactive in considering how the needs of customers with different interests are accorded fair treatment in line with their needs. Treating New Zealanders fairly when it comes to their money will lead to greater trust and confidence in the system. This is essential as we rebuild our economy. And to all of you who have made positive improvements ahead of regulatory changes, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. We'll also continue to progress other initiatives aimed at supporting financial resilience and well-being. For example, work on changes to insurance contract law will be continuing so that New Zealanders are confident that their insurance policies will work as they expect them to. This will in turn support the financial resilience of New Zealanders in the face of unexpected events. The government is also looking to establish a consumer data right. This seeks to improve customer choice and convenience through the ability for consumers to share their data with third parties, such as comparison sites or new payment methods. It also aims to improve the flow of information in the economy, encouraging the development of more tailored, sophisticated products and applications suited to individual consumer needs. So in summary, before I finish, the financial services sector has a key role to play in helping our economy recover. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, the government's primary focus has been on protecting jobs and incomes, cushioning the economic impact for businesses, ensuring that our critical trade and services can keep going, and on supporting the New Zealand economy to recover as quickly as possible. New Zealand has a robust and resilient economy that can respond to and recover from the economic impacts of the pandemic. As we move forward, the financial services sector has a crucial role to play in helping New Zealanders to navigate the ongoing financial challenges. Financial products will undoubtedly be an important part of this. In these difficult times, it is vital that financial advisors work with their customers to ensure that they are provided with the right information and tools to make the best financial decisions in their individual circumstances. And as financial advisors, you deal day in and day out with your clients to help them decide how to prepare for their future and protect themselves against the unexpected. When we ensure that ordinary New Zealanders are making the best decisions when it comes to their money, this will have flow-on benefits for financial markets more broadly. Appreciate the work that you have already been doing to assist your customers, and I'm interested in ideas on how we can work together to ensure New Zealanders are financially literate and can participate confidently in the financial services sector. So again, thank you to the Financial Services Council for inviting me here this morning. I encourage you to have conversations with your peers and the organisations here today to make sure you are ready to comply with the new requirements and to operate in the new regime. There are a number of people in this room with expertise to share who have given valuable input during the development of this regime. This today is a great opportunity to learn from them. Thank you again for all of your efforts in supporting good consumer outcomes. I look very much forward to working with all of you in the sector this year. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Minister, thank you very much. That was fantastic, and a great segue for many questions to come. How does it feel to kind of be back in government and with the breadth of portfolios that you have?
Thank you for the question. Good, thank you. It's really lovely. I have had a good summer, and I hope others have somewhere along the line got to spend some time with people they care about, had some time with friends and family over the Christmas break. It's an exciting time. I mean, we in New Zealand right now have an economy that has shown itself to be more resilient than many others, and partly that's because of the health response, the way in which we did the hard and early thing, and you know, I feel proud of the role I had to play in that in the early stages of our response. We've had that, then we've had an economic response as well. New Zealanders have played a part in all of that and feel a sense of ownership. So The team of 5 million is the cliche, but people really stepped up, got involved, and that's how we've got to be where we are. And it's the same with our economic recovery. I think people feel really engaged in it and feel like they have a role to play. And I think that means we can take things to a whole other level as we build increasing trust in the sector, get more people taking advice, and then build better outcomes for New Zealanders.
It's kind of interesting, we last year the FSC did the Money and You research, and it was very much about the resilience of New Zealanders. And we went into field very early on in almost at the first lockdown. And we asked things about jobs and how do you feel about money, and your note about people's ability after 3 months to actually have enough money to live on. So we tapped into that over 3 different tranches. The data was amazing in how resilient it was. Do you think that's because we are suddenly optimistic when we're answering those questions, or do you think innately people kind of do the right thing with their money, they save well, and when the rainy day comes, they're kind of in a strong enough position?
I fear sunny optimism has too big a role in all of this. Look, it'll be a mixture of both. People do have some idea. Of course, people survive day to day across the country, many on very modest incomes. But what we do know is that when people get advice, generally they do get better outcomes overall. So it's a matter of gently encouraging them in that direction, and giving good examples of how people's lives are changed through getting good advice. An advisor in my office recently shared a personal story. Her father had died relatively young of cancer. He'd taken out both life insurance and health insurance policies, was able to enjoy a quality of life that he otherwise wouldn't have been able to enjoy, and then set the family up for a more secure future. So you hear these stories often of people who have taken advice, got the products that are suited to their needs, and made a really positive change. Unfortunately, there are also stories, in my local paper in Dunedin, Barry Clue, who was turned out to be running a Ponzi scheme effectively. And I know people personally who came to me as an electorate MP who'd lost their savings and were in a very vulnerable position. So, it highlights the importance of making sure we get this right so people know there's a regime they can trust, people they can trust, and they reach out for financial help because they know they can be confident in that advice, because unfortunately when there's one bad story, lots of people hear it. And so if we've got a regime that's in place that's clear, that people understand, we will find more New Zealanders coming forward and getting the advice that will actually make them much better off.
So that's a great segue, and we'll launch some research a little later on this morning around the benefits of advice. But I guess the starkest number out of that research is that there's about 18.5% of people that actually have an advice relationship in New Zealand. There's about 35% that would consider taking it, but haven't. And there's a whole bunch, about 18%, that have taken it and they're kind of in and out of the system. But 18% of New Zealanders feels like way too low when you consider what the benefits of having a good, professional, engaged financial advice relationship.
Yeah, I think often too people don't know what they don't know. When I was working at the Treasury many moons ago, I remember working on a project around tertiary education and looking at studies, and what was really striking, one of the really striking things that we looked at in economic studies was the way in which people don't understand the benefits of compound interest. They don't understand that investing early for a long return is an incredibly valuable thing to do. And so in tertiary education, as an example, the returns to a tertiary education are phenomenal. But people overestimate the cost of it because of perceptions, and they underestimate the benefits over time that accrue from earning a higher income. And so, you can find examples all over the place of this. And it's about encouraging people, explaining a little bit, lifting their financial literacy so they actually seek that advice, so we can lift the number of people who are going and kind of consciously making decisions around their financial affairs and investing in their own futures and the futures of the people that they care about.
Because it really does feel that that's where the opportunity starts, or perhaps where the problem starts, which is a reasonably basic notion like compound interest. And whilst I say it's reasonably basic, actually it's relatively complex. And the question is, how do you start that conversation early enough so that your kids and our kids can kind of go, actually, these are things that Yeah, I kind of understand because, we were playing games when we were in second class or third class. I mean, do you think, without the education system being the solver of every problem in the world, kind of how important do you think that literacy capability piece is broadly in New Zealand?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important, and we look at the success of the sorted product that people access. One of the products that's being revisited by the capability organisation, and they are now going to go and see whether there's a product that can support people who are younger, who are not accessing these products, people from different cultures who are not accessing these products. That's going to be a really interesting piece of work, because we know that the people that are accessing those products already have a degree of financial literacy. They're more likely to reach out for help because they know what they know and what they don't know. Other folks don't have that opportunity because they don't quite know where to start. And so building that connection is the really important thing. I think that particular piece of work is going to be really important and interesting.
Yeah. And obviously warm welcome to the CFFC who are in the room today, and collectively across the sector we work closely on that field. Can we just segue briefly into Kiwisaver? There's obviously a default review going on. The Kiwisaver asset numbers came out last week. I think, the total pie is now over 73 odd billion dollars. So the average amount is now growing north of the 20,000. I mean, what's your sense of Kiwisaver being the great momentum of change in terms of the way New Zealanders think about savings and retirement planning and so on?
I think it's really important also to financial literacy. The default providers, I think we're expecting an announcement about May on that, and they'll be in place by December. And it's a process that, for good reason, I stay well away from. But it will be exciting to see that, and I think Kiwisaver has an important role to play, and particularly as it grows. We know that there's huge opportunity that comes with schemes like this. I remember when I was the economic development spokesperson in the dark days of opposition, I remember a statistic around the Australian risk saving schemes, and I think if memory serves me correctly, they were about 1.3 trillion under management at that stage. It'll be quite a lot more now, I'm sure. And someone had done the calculation that if Muldoon hadn't ditched the scheme we had back in his time as Prime Minister, we would have had in New Zealand around 300 billion under management here. It does add up, and what that's achieved in Australia is providing capital depth as well for the economy. It's attracted financial advisors back from overseas to Australia. They've built a really strong financial services industry there. And that's something that we're seeing build in New Zealand. And Kiwisaver has an incredibly important role to play. Who those default providers are is incredibly important. And the advice and products that you share to help people with their savings all contributes to that picture.
It's kind of interesting. I often cite this example, but my now 19-year-old, who at his first job, scooping ice creams, was 16, and he got a Kiwisaver form put in front of him. And that was kind of, other than his bank account, really the first time he had a financial product conversation that he needed to make a decision on, which of course at 16, he didn't have too much idea about what to do. But it feels almost like Kiwisaver is in many ways the gateway to opening the door to those conversations. And interesting your observations on that. The other observation is just on the tech space. We were talking at an FMA breakfast last week, the huge take-up on investing digitally through a lot of the new platforms that are... And so it's almost this convergence of time, money and technology that allows people to get to stuff a whole lot earlier and quicker. Just kind of interested in any observations you may have on that.
Well, I do think there's huge opportunity, and with the consumer data right, that will start to open things up in that respect. And in terms of your 16-year-old, now 19-year-old son, I couldn't agree more. I really think that Kiwisaver is the way in which people start to wrap their head around savings potential and so on. It's one of the key products that does help people with that whole equation.
I'm going to go to a couple of questions here, and then maybe a quick segue into life and health, and then we'll wrap. So if you've got any key questions, folks, Slido, the piece there. Question from the floor: what role do you think that the government should play in increasing awareness of the benefits and obtaining financial advice?
Look, I think that it's a partnership. We've already mentioned the CFFC and sorted, and I think it's got to be something that we work on together. So government does have that role in creating the regime that builds trust, and those are the things we're working on currently, making sure that the financial advice regime is up and running and bedded in. The Conduct of Financial Institutions Bill has its second reading next week, and then insurance contract law changes will have an exposure draft mid-next year. Those are all things government can do. However, the industry itself and the industry bodies in particular have a role in building confidence, and I'd be interested in ideas that people have about how we can build that confidence together. I think that is a real opportunity for me to learn from you, and there will be officials here throughout the day who will also be people whose ears you can and should get in. There are, I have to say, and some of them are here, so I shouldn't say nice things about them behind their backs. There's a really competent team, in my experience, within the ministry. I've worked with different parts of government over time. It's really nice to deal with people who want to understand, who want to solve problems. You won't always agree with everything that they decide, I'm sure, and nor do I, for that matter. But it's a good team, and so please do speak with them. Do let them know your thoughts, because this is something that we need to work on together.
Absolutely endorse those comments. We work closely with the team at MB and the team at the FMA and the team at the CFFC, and the openness and willingness to engage. It's not, we're not always going to get what we want, I imagine, like you, but that coalescing of thinking is fantastic. Just if I can just briefly move to life and health insurance, the data that we've recently pulled out has similarly alarming low take-up of both those product sets. And over the last couple of years, we've looked at this kind of whole notion of how New Zealanders think about managing risk in their lives. And insurance is typically you just offset the risk. That's why you buy the cover, which you do with your house and you do with your car, but you tend not to do on your life and your health as much. Again, interested in your observations, and how do we kind of shift the dial on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a ready-made answer for that, other than repeating a little bit about let's work together on how we build that literacy and understanding in the public. I do think it goes to the confidence piece. It's kind of a lot of jokes started when I was a kid about an insurance salesman knocking on the door, right? And those come from a place of distrust. I think New Zealanders are becoming more mature, are understanding the valuable place of insurance insurance policies over time. And I think, again, the regime's important, but I also think that it's up to us to build confidence in those projects. And all of you as members of different organisations want to be promoting through those organisations the benefits and establishing good brands, trusted brands in the marketplace that people know they can turn to for the financial advice that will see them and their loved ones better off.
Fantastic. Minister, last question. We're sitting here on the eve or the beginning of your tenure in this role. We work closely with Minister Farfoy, and in fact he ornamented many of our programs and sessions. In 3 years' time, if we're sitting here, what kind of sector would you have liked to have seen evolve and grow and develop because of the work that you've done?
Well, I want to see one where we're working together. I really think that in some situations government is best to get out of the way, and in other situations government has a role to play in building the institutions or strengthening the institutions that lead to trust. I think we'll know we've got a sector that's really humming if we see savings grow. There's a really good litmus test there. If people are investing in products, if they are making wise decisions about their financial futures and are confident and resilient.